great. And so really, just want to say it's super encouraging, to have you all here on this Earth Day. And I want to note that 2 years ago, our Office of Sustainability with community partners, we convened a climate justice convening. And so that was 2 years ago on Earth Day. And so much has gotten done the last several years. And at that convening, we were just starting out, exploring with community members and partners, what are our vision and values for climate justice? And so we know things like have look a lot different now since 2 years ago, and we really intend to keep that vision that we have imagined several years ago. And so, our goal for this webinar is to introduce you to the purpose and key components of the climate justice plan, and we want to use this time to provide clarity on what this plan entails and why it's important to our community. And this plan really, it offers us a vital roadmap for our collective future. And beyond tonight's presentation, we're really wanting to actively seek your feedback, not only in this space, but also hoping that you can take home lots of reflections and, feel confident in sharing questions, comments, and suggestions tonight. Before we begin, my apologies if I didn't introduce myself. My name is Monique Smiley, she, they pronouns, and I'm the Sustainability Engagement Specialist with Multnomah County Office of Sustainability. And I've been one of the project team members on this plan, and I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Earth Day. My name is John Bashatinsky. I'm the Director of Sustainability here at Multnomah County, and I use he, him pronouns. Thank you for joining us. I'll pass it to Jay Raj.
Thanks, Sean. Happy Earth Day, everyone. My name is Jay Raj Singh. I use he and they pronouns. I'm the Climate and Health Program Specialist Senior in the Public Health Division in the Health Department at Multnomah County. I'll pass it to Tim.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Lynch. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a senior policy analyst in the Multnomah County Office of Sustainability. So glad to be with you tonight. Back to you, Monique.
Thank you. No, my apologies. My keyboard was sticky. So next slide, please. So tonight's webinar agenda, we really want to cover the history of our climate work, the climate justice plan goals, an overview on what are our core goals, and then discussing clear instructions on how you can submit feedback. And then we will use most of this time for Q&A. Next slide, please. And so session details. If you do need closed captioning, I do believe there is, if you go to like your toolbar and click on more, you can automatically embed closed captions. Unless I think someone else, sorry. Sometimes there's like little technical things I just want to clarify. And we will be recording this presentation, like I said, and we'll have it on our office's webpage. And we really want to aim to keep this initial presentation 30 minutes and then leave the rest of this time to get your questions and comments. And so to help guide us through the information, because it is a lot, we will be providing access to key resources and relevant links in the chat. And so just keep an eye out for those. And to submit questions, it should be on your toolbar at the bottom, but you can click on Q&A and then share any questions you want, and we'll read them out loud. It doesn't have to just be a question. It could be a suggestion, an idea. So really want to keep this open for you. And then I want to just say, we want to emphasize this is a respectful space for everyone participating, and we want to make sure that all voices are heard and valued. Your input is critical at this stage, and we hope this session provides the clarity you need to understand your role in shaping this plan and offer constructive feedback within your communities. Please keep in mind that this is a draft. We are still in the process of refinement, including technical reviews and formatting. And we know this is a significant topic, and we appreciate your eagerness to learn more. We'll do our best to address as many questions and comments as possible tonight. Um, and importantly, we will be following up with this PowerPoint presentation and all the resources we discussed. And I will now kick it off to John to present.
Thanks, Monique. I wanted to ground our conversation tonight in a little bit of background and history. Multnomah County, we've been working on the issue of climate change for over 20 years now. And a lot of this work has taken place in collaboration with the city of Portland, including the climate action, what we then called the Global Warming Action Plan. The 2013, the health department developed a assessment of how climate change is impacting our personal health. How a warming climate is going to impact our own ability to be well. 2014, we had the first sort of countywide assessment of what kind of vulnerabilities we can anticipate. 2015 was our climate action plan, which is the most recent climate action plan adopted by the Board of County Commissioners. In 2017, we had an important declaration by the board committing the county to moving towards 100% renewable energy by 2050 and 100% renewable electricity by 2035. In 2020, we launched the Climate Justice by Design process to help us understand how we could reframe climate planning to really focus on the needs of frontline community. In 2021, the health department with Clackamas County Health and Washington County Health began looking at how climate change was impacting our health outcomes and began producing this annual report. Of course, 2021 was also the year that we experienced the tragic heat dome event. Had such a huge impact on so many lives here in Multnomah County and throughout the state, and was obviously a devastating event ecologically as well. And then in 2023, maybe the last bullet point here on our timeline, Multnomah County launched a climate accountability lawsuit against Big Oil, essentially asserting that Big Oil caused climate change. They knew they were causing it, and they hid the fact that they were causing it, and worked actively to prevent meaningful action. And so that's causing the county harm in terms of money, and will continue to cause the county harm in the future. And we're one of many jurisdictions across the country that has taken this kind of action, which is I think really important. All right, Monique, I'll let you take the next slide. Or J-Rod, sorry.
No problem, John. Thanks, John. So I'm just going to go over the concept of the community-driven planning process, and through conventional planning approaches, solutions to the climate crisis are rarely developed collaboratively. But with this climate justice plan, we're taking a community-driven approach by building upon the recognition that with or without partnership of government, communities have long been working to address and act on environmental injustices. So this slide describes the community-driven framework that we're using that centers justice and recognizes not only the unequal impacts of climate change, but also addresses the root causes and the systems designed to perpetuate inequities and injustices. So the community-driven approach centers frontline communities, who are those impacted first and worst from climate chaos, by really allowing them to define the problem as well as the solutions. So this is a co-creative process, and the diversity of partners has the potential to lead to better long-term and sustainable solutions. And this approach really recognizes the insights that every individual can bring to the table, and especially those who continue to experience the worst impacts, who we believe are the experts on how to address their needs. So community-driven climate justice planning takes an iterative and circular approach to co-creation, where sustained engagement with local community leaders and partners is really interwoven into all aspects of the planning process. So the initial community design and visioning work that culminated in really two foundational documents, what we call the zine, the cover on the left you'll see, and the framework, which is the cover of the document seen on the right, which was completed in July 2023. So we can share the links to these documents in the chat and also after the webinar, but this initial iteration of the planning process really helped lay the groundwork for really practicing innovative climate justice planning, and it continues to put a collaborative governance approach into practice for our climate planning efforts. So the climate justice framework is really a blueprint of our vision and values to guide the climate justice plan. This was further informed by the zine. The zine is particularly important as it centers storytelling and lived experiences to understand local and climate and environmental justice issues, really amplifying community voices through narratives and visual art and expressions from local creatives and artists. The data gathered for the zine was community driven, ensuring that the goals and actions we develop are rooted in the real experiences and understanding of climate justice within our communities. So while community-led efforts to address climate and environmental injustices are not new, this process aims to build stronger, more authentic, and equitable partnerships between the county, residents, and community-based organizations. So I'll pass it to Monique to really further discuss how we practice collaborative governance and sort of the unique composition and role of who we worked with, which we call the steering committee and other partners.
Thanks, Jay Raj. So continuing from building off the framework and the environmental justice zine, we continued moving from vision to action with this next phase. And so in November 2023, we developed the Climate Justice Plan Steering Committee. And the steering committee is made up of community-based organizations and community members. And in this process, we really wanted them to be, I want to say, the leaders, and staff be the technical experts and support their decision-making. And so we, through community input and feedback, we developed a steering committee of 13 base community organizations, and they are the experts through guiding this plan's entire development and ensuring that lived experience across different sectors: energy, advocacy, social services, air quality, community development, and houselessness. These groups really represent the different intersections that represent climate justice. And although some of these groups may traditionally not be categorized as environmental groups, the core principle was really having a diverse range of folks who hold themselves accountable to those groups that are most impacted by climate change, but also having that lived experience and the work they serve. And so this collaborative space, unlike most traditional government spaces, we really didn't tell them what to do. It was very much a space to generate people-centered solutions. And so they've helped us develop the involvement in goals, identifying lessons, and really having challenging staff the way that we usually do traditional planning. And so these groups really represent those who are most impacted by climate change and advise the county, based on their work with the community. And so a core principle that you might be able to hear through all of this is co-designing. The core principle is co-designing community engagement. And so like this webinar, your input is very critical at shaping this plan that will serve our entire community. Next slide, please. And so as you've heard with this community-driven approach, we're really centered on, people and place-based solutions. And so This means placing the voices and lived experiences most impacted by the climate change at the very heart of our planning process. And so continuing to recognize that these communities are the true experts, they live with the daily realities of climate change and possess that invaluable knowledge and innovative solutions. So we had the steering committee co-collaborate and lead us throughout this process to get to the draft plan. And how we were able to come up with, we'll soon talk about our goals, was through being advised by the steering committee. Last summer, we actively participated with over 120 community members. And our primary focus was including working with environmental justice-led organizations, youth, immigrants, refugees, elders, and folks at living in East County. And and through this, we really, wanted to use the framework to lay that groundwork. And we worked with these communities based on their steering committee's recommendations to help us create this draft plan. Next slide, please. So I know this is a lot of information already, and so I know your heads are probably all stirring. I will have one of the staff submit the 2-pager to refer to these universal goals. So we have 12 universal goals that we created through that community input. And as you can see, that just looking at some of them already, they really go beyond pollution reduction. And it's really about, creating a more just and equitable community for everyone. And what that means is getting to the root causes of climate change disparities. And Tim just added it to the chat, but you can refer to all 12 goals on our universal goals 2-pager. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to try to quickly skim through these, and you can look at the 2-pager for more detail. But as you can see, these goals address the interconnectedness of climate and social issues. We see civic engagement, wealth building, active transportation, access to culturally appropriate food. And so the steering committee emphasized addressing people's needs and not just traditional environmental metrics. And next slide, please. And so these goals are a guiding constellation linking climate action with equity and well-being. And our focus on these universal goals allows us to build a plan that promotes belonging and shared responsibility. We believe that any progress strengthens our community and fosters a future built on broad consensus. And so, these goals are universally desirable, and they can come off seeming very ambitious, but we really believe that any progress made towards them, strengthens our commitment. And so to achieve these goals, we've developed strategies and actions that will require both collaborative leadership from government and the community. And we want to recognize that many of these initiatives are already underway, driven by strong advocacy across diverse partnerships. And like I said, we are setting ambitious goals designed to resonate with all, because with climate justice, we want to achieve work that's meaningful and long lasting. So I will now have John talk more about, what are the key components of these goals and actions?
Yeah. So thanks, Jerash. So right, what do we said we want to do things, right? We have these goals, but which is great, and kind of creates this like Monique was saying, this constellation of objectives that we can kind of navigate by, but we have to navigate. We have to find our way to those goals, and so we developed this typology of actions to help us identify what types of what we were talking about, so we can kind of compare the different strategies to each other. And one obvious strategy, for government is we can change the law, right? There's obviously there's constraints on that. There's certain powers that uh, the state has that we don't have as a county government, or sometimes there's uh, you know powers that are shared with cities and whatnot. So it gets technical, and it takes a lot of analysis, legal analysis to figure out. But one important tool we have is that we can change the county code or the laws that govern the county. Another is to spend money, right? I mean, we're right now, as we speak, in the midst of the Multnomah County budget process, and this prioritizes how the county is going to allocate resources, and really speaks to the county's values. And so the um, you know by allocating dollars to specific types of strategies, we are able to effectuate some of these actions. We can also advocate for change. I mentioned that we're not capable of implementing all the law changes that we need, and obviously we might need to ask or advocate for more funding for certain types of programs. And so we can advocate on our own as Multnomah County. We can join with community-based organizations, residents, and other partners in order to advocate for change on a number of different levels. We also want to leave space for things that are sort of outside of Multnomah County direct purview, and think about, what else is happening. One example of mutual aid that I like to bring up is safety during an emergency. Your safety during an emergency is really connected to the relationship you have with your neighbors, because your neighbor is the most likely person to come to your immediate aid, right? They're going to get there faster than the fire department or the ambulance. And so really there's so many ways in which and so many examples of people helping people. I just was talking to a group today, and there was a person who was telling me he lives out in Corbett, and they need to get rid of all the brush to keep their home safe from fire. They didn't want to burn it all, so they rent a wood chipper, and they chip all the they get like big wood chipping days, and so they could chip all this wood up and get that debris away. So just an awesome example, another example of mutual aid, people helping people. um, Jayraj a moment ago talked about how we utilized a third space governance model in order to help develop this plan. And we feel that there's other areas where this model of community and government kind of coming together as co-equals to find solutions to problems is applicable, both formal and informal. And so that's a really important strategy that we want to continue. This is my favorite one, game changers. We have some recent examples right here in Multnomah County. So, City of Portland charter reform, right? There was a form of government that had been around, for literally, 100 plus years, and it wasn't working for city residents anymore, and they went out, and voted in a new system of government. The Clean Energy Fund is another example, right? Like, we need a lot of resources in order to adapt to and mitigate the climate change. Let's go out and create some revenue for that. And one final example to bring it back to Multnomah County is the example of preschool for all, right? And really vital. We don't have enough resources for early childhood interventions. We know that they're very effective in helping young people, throughout their entire life course. But there's also a huge component to moms and dads being able to, go to work and afford, and have quality childcare. So those are all the examples that we came up with. We also want to leave a little space for forums like this, because we know that maybe there's other types of strategies that we just haven't thought of yet. And maybe you'll think of it and suggest it to us, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Next slide. So let's maybe talk about what this could look like. We have a goal, like a macro level goal. And, we think of that goal as being something that applies to everybody, right? Everybody would like to have clean air. Everybody would like to like to have, access to clean water, et cetera. all the goals that Monique just talked about. Below that, we have targeted strategies. And why do we say targeted? What do we mean by that? Well, we know that not everyone is equally situated today with respect to these goals. Maybe you live in a neighborhood that already has a lot of trees and a lot of shade and a lot of access to parks. It doesn't make sense for the city or the county to spend a lot of resources to increase that by some marginal percentage. Obviously, we want to maintain it and make sure it stays in good condition. But there's other areas where we probably want to focus, new resources towards that have fewer trees, that have less access to parks, right? So that's what we mean by targeted. How are specific populations situated to the goal, and how do we target strategies towards those populations that are furthest from the goal? And so our belief that by targeting those resources towards the people who are furthest from the goal, we'll be able to move the entire community further and faster towards that universal target. Of course, we just talked about the types of action, right? So that helps us kind of understand, like, what do we need to do? If it's an advocacy action, then we have to think about, who are we going to advocate to? Is it the utility commission? Is it the legislature? Is it another city? Is the federal government? Who's our coalition? Or is it, if it's funding, do we go out and get a grant? Do we try to ask the board of commissioners to prioritize funding for a certain type of program? So that's, those the type of action helps us develop a strategy that's a little bit, level down. Then, of course, we have to go out and implement it. And then we have to track our progress towards the implementation. Is it moving the needle? And, we really kind of envision the goals as being static, like that constellation that we're moving towards. But we know that our strategies are going to have to be adjusted based on how effective they are and how relevant they are as time goes on. Okay, so let's try this one more time, but now a little bit more specific to something that's in the plan. So every community member is resilient to extreme weather and climate threats. Great. I think we can all agree that's a good thing to do. And so we know one risk factor is a lack of shade and green space in a neighborhood. And so we can create and fund a program and to maybe support tree planting. We've done that already in certain neighborhoods. But we can also think about advocacy, because it's really the cities that handle tree planting. So how do we advocate to our fellow governments and come together with coalition and come into coalition with others to make that advocacy even more effective? And then really, what are our goals around that? We don't want people to die of extreme weather conditions. We want to minimize the morbidity that comes from that type of exposure. We want to make sure we disaggregate the data by race and income. You could see I didn't finish typing that. Good job, John, with those edits. And then community data on access to shade and cooling. And what we mean by community data is, what are people's narrative and lived experiences? J. Raj was talking about the zine a second ago, and that's the kind of what we're getting at, is having those narrative conversations so that we're making sure that we're getting as rich and complete of a picture of what's going on the ground as possible. Next slide, please. Okay. So we keep on talking about this idea of a shared vision, and we really mean it. We want to not only talk about what the problem is, but we want to, imagine a world that's better together. And so we really hope that you all that are participating tonight and everyone in the community can really use this plan to find, handholds and footholds into taking action with us, on your own, with your neighbors, in order to move towards this vision of a climate safe community that's really doing what we need to reduce our emissions and protect ourselves against this growing threat. So we want to strengthen our community. We want to strengthen our capacity for collective action, build power together to really take this threat as seriously as it deserves. For the county, this is really going to help guide. We are hoping it's going to help guide the board's prioritization of investments. We talked about funding, help us understand, where we need to put our time in order to, as the Office of Sustainability or the Department of Health, into prioritizing certain projects, and helping us, guide this work going forward. Next slide, please. Okay. We need your help. Monique mentioned up top, this is a draft plan, and we have had incredible help from a hugely diverse group of people to help us get to this point. And my colleagues are brilliant, but we haven't tapped into everyone's brilliance yet. And that's why we're here tonight. Is we need you to weigh in, and we need you to help us spread the word so other people weigh in. So, what are we getting right in the plan? What do you like about the plan? What are we missing? What can we improve? We want to know what kind of metrics and data are going to be meaningful for us to track over time. Really, it's our intention to, not just track our greenhouse gas emissions and, how steep the curve is on our reduction of those emissions. That's really important. And that's obviously one of our main goals. But we also want to know what metrics are going to be meaningful for each of the goals, right? Because we want to take this holistic vision of what it means to, fight for climate justice. And we want to know what networks you're tapped into and what the networks think about this plan. So we're hoping that we hear from individuals. We're also hoping that we hear from community-based community organizations and civic organizations and churches and anybody else who is interested in this plan and has a connection to Multnomah County. Okay, and I think this is where I pass it back to you, Monique.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I know that was a lot of information, and I'm not sure if that was a little over 30 minutes. But before we move towards Q&A and discussion, just want to share ways that you can submit feedback. So you can scan this QR code to access our public feedback form to share your input. With that feedback form, there's also a link to the draft climate justice plan document. You can also email your feedback directly to us. And so whether you're an individual, an organization, a neighborhood association, feel free, if you want to submit a letter in support, any resources that might help us, data, really, those are the two big platforms that we're hoping for ways for you to submit feedback. And then we have been also doing some outreach engagement with organizations and neighbors around just, I want to say, specific feedback sessions. And so public comment and outreach is going to it's going until mid-May. We will keep folks updated on the exact timeline for when it ends. And then the bottom link right there is just updates and more information, kind of what we just all talked about. And so we will send you this information. And if you have any ideas or, are wanting us to maybe give a presentation to your group, you can also email us directly at the sustainability at multco.us. And I'm going to leave this up here for now. We will, like I said, we'll also send these resources over email to all of you. And I know that was a lot of information, but I just want to open it up for Q&A. So the first question we have is from Jan Zuckerman, and she wants to know, what was your process of outreach for the zine?
J-Raj, do you want to handle that, or well, maybe I'll start, and then Tim, you can fill in, or J-Raj. The zine kind of came together in a few different parts. One is we were meeting when we were developing the climate justice framework with our steering committee. this question of we really landed on this idea that we want targeted strategies, and so like who is the target for the strategy, right? We needed some information, and we started talking about this environmental justice snapshot that the environmental health team, JR's team, and our sustainability team we were coordinating on, where we were looking at uh, the geographies with the highest proportion of predominantly white community and the highest proportion of people of color. Census block groups, the top quintile to get really exact. And then we compared across these 10 different environmental justice indicators like um, access to transit and tree canopy cover and a few and a bunch of others. And it was a really great report, and you can find it online. And then we were talking to our partners, and we're like, well, this is like a very governmenty type of report. And what about this idea of like asking people what their experience of it was, and of these various environmental justice indicators? And so our friends at the Coalition of Communities of Color collected, did focus groups. They sent out a survey, really specifically targeting people of color. And we then took we had our Earth Day summit, and we took all that information, all that qualitative information, and we started trying to making sense of it. We hired some consultants to help us, and we did a lot of work ourselves. And then those all that information then helped us better understand the data we were seeing, from the quantitative data we were seeing. And I'll just cite one really interesting example. If you look at the distribution of TriMet bus stops across Multnomah County, there's not really a big disparity in terms of demographic disparity. Like whether you're predominantly a white neighborhood or predominantly a neighborhood that's predominantly people of color, there's not. It seems pretty equal. But when you start talking to people, all of a sudden they're like, well, the bus doesn't come that often, or the bus stop is, there's no shelter. I have to stand on the side of the road. There's no sidewalk. It doesn't feel safe. I have to cross a busy road in order to get to the bus stop, and it just doesn't feel safe. I don't feel safe, for a variety of reasons. And so all of a sudden it's like that access, that when you look at it just from a quantitative point of view, doesn't feel as equal, right? And you could say the same about like access to parks. Like, well, the park doesn't really have that many nice amenities, and I don't like to go to the park that's in my neighborhood, or I don't want to send my kids to the park because there's a 5-lane road between us and the park, and so I just don't feel safe letting them cross the street by themselves. So all of a sudden, there's a lot more nuance that comes together once you start asking people these questions about what their lived experience of something is, as opposed to just looking at the quantitative data. And maybe Tim, if you want to jump in there a little bit too, might be helpful.
Yeah, thanks, John. That was a great answer. I think sort of recognizing that the data that we are able to collect, that we typically look to, only tells part of the story. We're really invested in another initiative that's related to the climate justice plan to help us support kind of community data collection and those stories and experiences in a way that we can then use to measure, in the case of the climate justice plan, to measure whether we're meeting the moment truly for communities, not just looking at sort of the dominant macro level data, but like how people are experiencing these issues, because it is very, these things are experienced very much in an individual and, as someone said earlier, really intersectional ways. And so we're excited to continue to work to better understand that as we move forward.
Thank you. And so, sorry, just making sure. No, thank you so much for answering that, and appreciate Jan for you asking that. The next question, this is from Michael Hall, and I think it, relates to a lot of the other initiatives that the county and city of Portland are doing. But we know that gas-powered leaf blowers, this has been a really big initiative. They're harmful to workers who operate them, and most importantly, our world's climate. And so I know this is work that we have been doing. And so this question is elimination of gas-powered leaf blowers within the scope of climate justice planning? And maybe like explain that intersection.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Michael and I are longtime friends here, and the I would say that eliminating gas-powered leaf blowers is absolutely a part of the plan. I don't think we have a strategy specifically called out to it, and maybe that's in part because when we were putting this plan together, that was really well on track. The Quiet Clean PDX had successfully advocated for a leaf blower phase out, the gas powered leaf blower phase out at the city of Portland, and we were collaborating with the city on implementation. That continues. We're still working on it. There's been maybe some bumps in the road, but what I think was I want to sort of highlight why I think the gas powered leaf blower ban is important, sort of beyond its immediate impacts. I think Michael talked about that. It's obviously very polluting. Two-stroke engines mix oil and gasoline, and create a tremendous amount of emissions. Especially relative to the size of the engine and the duration of its use on a typical period. And so, and there's lots of other things not to like about leaf blowers. They're noisy, is another way that they kind of pollute the environment. But the policy action that the city took, I think, is important in other ways as well. Well, first of all, they pollute the air so much, so we know we can't have clean air if we're using gas powered leaf blowers. But I would kind of take that out a level and say, like, we can't have clean air if we're using fossil fuels, period. Right? We can't have a stable climate if we continue to use fossil fuels. So you don't have to take my word for it. You can, there's an international panel of climate change, has really documented that in no uncertain terms, that really to keep the planet within a habitable range for human life, we really need to phase out completely the use of fossil fuels. And that's, obviously we love market-based kind of like nudges and incentives and stuff like that. That's all very good and important. But we also know it's going to take actual regulation. And the city of what the city said was like, hey, we're just not going to use this technology anymore. There's viable alternatives that can give you the same service in terms of blowing leaves, the requisite number of newtons to push leaves around, that come from electricity or battery pack blower, for example. I know, Michael, your favorite the alternative is the rake. So that's another option and possibility that's available to people. And so government action is going to have to include, in order for us to reach our climate goals, is going to have to include the phase out of fossil fuels through regulatory action. And the exact details of that are really important, because they can have both negative and positive consequences that we have to sort of ameliorate for and optimize for. But really, this is what Quiet Clean achieved, which I think is a notable achievement, is to say, like, we're not going to use this fossil fuel based technology any longer, and we're going to have to do that in other sectors as well.
Thank you. Next question is from Greg Hayward, and Jonathan. The question is, how will creating this plan impact the county's funding decisions? Will they be funneled through this plan or a lens? How is it embedded in a financial decision making, and how solid is it embedded?
Thanks, Greg. I think
Oh, apologies. Sorry. And I think they also are recognizing, especially in a time, where we have a budget scarcity.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. That's a great question, right? Well, first of all, so I would say that we're still plan development, so don't look for any big changes in this year's budget. Obviously, we're in a very budget constrained moment, and so our timing isn't quite synced up with the plan and the budget, which the budget, of course, is its own type of plan, probably the most important plan that the government puts together in any given year. And the other thing I would say too is that the county provides some really important services that are really vital for our resilience as a community, and not just in sort of like the climate resilient sort of ways, but that that we talk about more specifically in the plan, but in ways where kids are getting vaccinated, there's mental health care through the schools. There's clinics in our neighborhoods. Just as an example, every single refugee coming to Oregon will be medically screened at our one of our clinics. And so there's all these vital services that the county is performing anytime, libraries, elections, and all those things are sort of like foundational to or foundational, and we're trying to build on top of them. And I know this is kind of sound like a BS answer, so I'm trying my best. Maybe to answer it more specifically before I phone a friend is to also say that yeah, I mean, like, definitely we want the board to use this document, and we will certainly be advocating with the board in future budget cycles to fund certain priorities. And we do that every year. And this plan, we're hoping by not only the board's endorsement of the plan once it's finalized, but also through ongoing collaboration with the community, will help to elevate and fund the priorities that are identified in the plan. There's no guarantee, and budgets can get crazy, and times can be rough. So we'll see. And that's just like going to be one of those things that we have to tackle on a year by year basis as the budgets come up. But it's something that we're going to certainly utilize the plan to do, which is to help set priorities. I don't know, Tim, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah.
I don't mean to phone a friend on that one, but like, it's just I feel like I'm maybe flubbing it a little bit.
No. I actually think you did well. And I'm kind of the old man in the shop. I've been around a while, and the county's gone through budget fluctuations. And typically what happens, of course, resources are an issue, but to the extent that resources aren't immediately available, what we'll typically do is focus on the things that we have existing capacity for, that are often doing the work that we already do and doing it differently. So just thinking about the risks that this plan and sort of climate justice as an experience for our community presents. How do we think about the way the county shows up in community in a way that really like honors those, and that I think John mentioned earlier, that it really is helping to support community to have its own capacity to respond and to build through some of these issues. So we get creative and really lean into the capacity we do have. And ultimately it's the board and kind of the economic conditions that shapes some of that, but we do the best we can. And we have resources, just like the folks here on the call, who are at the ready to continue this work if and when it's adopted by the board.
And I think it's just to emphasize the frame that we have on this is that like, of course, this is a plan for the Office of Sustainability and Multnomah County writ large, and the Board of County Commissioners and the chair. But this also, I think, or at least I hope, will be a plan that the community can rally around and say, hey, this is actually really important. We need to, direct resources, towards these priorities. And I have to say, like, the voices of community play a big role in the funding decisions that any of our local governments make. And so I would not diminish for a second the voices that you all have in that process.
Thank you for that explanation. We don't have any current questions right now. And these could also be comments. Also, if you have any questions following up, this isn't just the end of this. We will be engaging and talking about this plan more over the next month, but we'll just give it a few minutes. And just really want to appreciate you all attending this, especially on a beautiful Tuesday evening. And I think originally we thought this would be a larger webinar attendance. And so I am trying to see. Oh, let's see. Sorry, I have a question that just popped up. Let me read it really quick. So this is from Ryan Bellinson. The question is, by focusing holistically on climate justice rather than more narrowly on carbon reduction, are there particular opportunities the plan seeks to finance actions by bringing together funding between multiple county departments or across multiple agencies by trying to produce co-benefits?
Ryan, I love this question so much. Yes, absolutely. I mean, what kind of looking at that brought to mind this idea we used to sort of when I first started working on climate, it was almost like we have to we can't talk about adaptation, because we have to focus on reducing emissions. All our energy has to be on reducing emissions because we can't waste our time or energy or resources focusing on how we're going to adapt. And I totally understand that conversation where it was a long time ago, but I think that the Venn diagram of climate mitigation, reducing emissions, and climate adaptation, getting ready for being better prepared for the impacts of the climate crisis is more of a circle than we might imagine. And there's lots of actions that we can take today to make our community stronger. So, one area that I want to do a lot more work in is home decarbonization, and with a particular focus on low income residents. And we've been doing this work a little bit over the past few years. We've had some funding from the state, some grants from the federal government, the old federal government, and the focus has been to look for low and moderate income or find low and moderate income households that in particular are using wood or oil heat or electric resistance heat, more polluting, less efficient forms of home heating, and replace that home heating device with a heat pump. If you don't know what a heat pump is, it is you have one in your house probably right now. It's called your refrigerator. It helps to it moves heat from one place to another. So if you open up your refrigerator, it's nice and cool inside, or even go down to the freezer or up to depending where your freezer is, you can go in the freezer and it's freezing cold. Water's turned to ice in there. And if you put your hand in the back of the refrigerator, typically it'll be nice and warm back there. That's because the heat is being moved from inside to the outside, right? But and a home heat pump works in the same exact way, except it's reversible. So in the wintertime, it is taking the ambient heat outside and moving it into your house. And in the summertime, it's taking the ambient heat inside your house and moving it outside and venting it outside. And, so it's either keeping your house warm or cool. And that technology is also incredibly efficient, right? It is for every 1 unit of energy that you put in, you can get like 3 units of energy out. It's magic almost, but it's not really magic, it's just physics. And the great part about it is that you have efficient heating, but then you also can have efficient cooling. And cooling is increasingly becoming a necessity for people in our hot summers. So it's adaptive, and it's reaching our goal of reducing emissions. So those are the types of, and it's the type of strategy where sustainability is coordinating with Department of County Human Services and the Health Department, to bring together resources and from across the enterprise in order to help us to help implement that. We're going to need a lot more of those kinds of collaborations and investments in order to reach our goals. And part of the reason that we focus so much on justice, right, is that like a higher income household is going to have the financial wherewithal to go out and finance a home energy upgrade, or to um, make sure, or to have better insulation or whatever. But for moderate and lower income households, that's just not, it's going to be very difficult without some assistance. And so we want to be there with that assistance. And it can simultaneously give us cleaner air, make us more climate resilient, make us more energy efficient, and hopefully eliminate fossil fuel use as well. So that's just one. I think that's one example where you can have win-win-win, across the spectrum.
Thank you, John. Just don't have any other questions right now. I did open. Oh, sweet. It stops and then it comes in right away. Let me just filter these questions. Let's see. Sorry, I'm sort of a slow reader, everyone, so I sometimes have to like read it first and then talk out loud. So this is anonymous. So, the county, so we understand the county's busy with budget decisions. And so if the county is busy with budget decisions, how and when will this feedback from the public on this plan be given to the commissioners? And what form? Is the time frame for this to have information to the commissioners after the budget planning is finished? Then what happens?
Yeah, thank you for this great question. It kind of makes me think we should have a next step slide in our next time we do this presentation. Yeah, so we are going to be gathering feedback like from tonight, and obviously we have our online form, just to plug that again, and other ways that you can submit comment. What we're going to do once the public comment period closes and we're ready, start to process some of this data as it comes in, is to look and see what the feedback is, and then make adjustments to the plan based on that feedback. We will then, so we'll be redrafting the plan, or finalizing the plan, I should say, with this new information. We'll then present that redrafted plan to our steering committee, and work with them to finalize the plan. Once our steering committee has signed off, we will then present the plan to the Board of County Commissioners and ask for their endorsement of the plan. So that's sort of our process, collect information, use that information to make the plan better, make sure our steering committee has signed off on whatever changes we want to make, and iterate with our steering committee as needed, and then present the plan to the board and the public at large, and ask the board to adopt the plan. That won't happen before the budget process is over. The budget process, the chair actually will release her executive budget on Thursday, the 24th, and then April 24th, and then the Board of County Commissioners and the chair will hold a series of meetings on departmental budgets and have public comment, public forums to solicit feedback from the public about the budget, and they'll use that feedback to formulate their final budget proposal. And sometime in June, the board will vote on the final budget. They have to complete the budget, before the fiscal year is over. The fiscal year ends on June 30th. So, that process will be done no later than June 30th, but probably a good ways before that. Mid-June is I think the scheduled final vote on the budget. So that's our budget process. It sort of repeats every year. The kind of like as soon as the budget ends, everyone takes like a week break, and then they start working on the budget again. And so, but it really sort of heats up, in the new year, and kind of culminates, with the presentation to with the board adoption in June. So we're imagining this plan that we're working on now is going to be around for at least, we're hoping, the next decade, at least, especially the goals portion of it. Obviously we'll be reporting on it regularly, So it's not going to line up with this year's budget, but future budgets, it will hopefully help inform based on based on whatever the final product is. Did that answer your question, Anonymous?
I'll give folks time to process that answer. And my apologies for being off camera. I'm having allergies, even though I've taken 2 Zyrtec today. So gotta love the increase in pollen, especially from the impacts of climate change. And they said yes, thanks. It did. You did answer their question, John.
Oof.
Um, Still just taking a few moments. We don't have any questions popping up right now. And if you have questions, oh, there we go. This is another anonymous attendee. How was the steering committee experience how was the steering committee experience process compared to the past climate planning?
Since I was, maybe Tim, you can talk about the sort of the feedback we got from the 2015 plan, and maybe Monique, you can talk about the experience of the steering committee this time around.
Sure. Thanks, John. Great question. Not to go into too deep, but the last, as John mentioned, the last official climate plan that we adopted was in 2015, and so that we'd worked on that for several years before that. We really sought to do something different with that plan. Before that, most plans across the world, and including locally, had not really talked about equity and community in a meaningful way, and so we really sought to change that. So we, alongside of a broader steering committee with a lot of different perspectives, we also had an equity focused committee that really tried to understand the actions, the desires, the outcomes of the climate plan through a community lens. And while we accomplished a lot in that process, built some relationships and really helped improve the plan in a number of ways by being more explicit around particularly where there were opportunities to really support equitable outcomes in our community. Because of the nature of the way we did that planning, by sort of having a side table, I don't think we were able to achieve fully the goals that we had set out to prove. And beyond that, I think one of the missteps that we had along the way was not having a clear vision for how community continues to be a key partner in the work moving forward. So a lot of those organizations who were part of that had subsequently sort of launched their own body of work around climate justice, and some of which led to some of those amazing outcomes that John mentioned, like the Portland Clean Energy Fund, really drive their own agenda. And I think where that was a misstep, I think it's really important, that kind of organizing outside of government. But we could have been working hand in hand, I think, had the government partners shown up in a different way with those communities, with those community organizations. And I think we're really focused this time around to make sure those missteps don't happen. We're envisioning, as you heard a number of times, this plan is not just about government. This is really understanding this explicit recognition of the importance and power and the role that community will play in this work, in the indefinite future. And we have to be working hand in glove together to try to solve these problems. It's so much bigger than government, and than anything government can do. So I think we've learned some great lessons, and I think we try to put that in practice here. And Monique, I don't know if you want to talk about the steering committee's experience with that, but feeling like that's something pretty different.
Yeah, I would say just from my experience with the steering committee is we're not just giving them, something to react to, or, kind of like a yes or no. It's really been about relationship building, especially in the beginning, over the beginning of the first few months. I want to say something else that's been different is we consulted with the previous community partners who helped us with the work on the zine and framework to really, they really advised us on, what does a participation agreement look like for the steering committee? And so I want to say having community input shape what a steering committee could look like, having a clear understanding of the roles and power, and I want to say from, you know, advising us on what the meeting agendas to should look like to, you know, uh, basically, I want to say like there was one time, we gave them an outline and it was totally not around their priorities. And so they didn't vote. Yes, they did not vote moving forward on it. And so I want to say it's very much, we give them the parameters and support to make them feel empowered and confident in their decision making. And I want to say also, we give a lot of the technical resources. And so oftentimes, we don't want the steering committee to feel bogged down with logistics. We want to really make sure we're utilizing their time. And then also, new organizations and faces in this process, people who traditionally don't see themselves as leaders, but have been doing that work that's intersectional to climate justice. Next question's from Greg Hayward. Having gone deep with the steering committee and equity committees, which is great, how do you plan to go wide with getting out the word to wide audiences with this plan and work? So great question. I'm happy. I know we talked a lot about the previous outreach with the zine and framework. And so we're really continuing, to build on, there's always more engagement, more people to reach. And so we're continuing to build on that, reconnect with those folks, but also continuing to identify new groups. And so how we are planning to do this? Well, I want to say we are a small but mighty team. And so I want to say the big task or work we're doing, especially around partnership. And so, we're utilizing all communication media outlets. We've been going to tabling events, like general tabling events, spreading the word through other networks. And like I said, but really it's been partnership, people giving us recommendations and doing that collaboration. And so, um, you know, uh, and John, do you want to share anything about that too?
Yeah, just I put in the chat, but just an invitation to let us know about other opportunities where we can help spread the word. We just tell a friend, email a friend, let them know that reach out to your networks, let them know that this comment period is happening. We're likely to extend the comment period, by an extra month. And so, there'll be more time. We realize people are busy, and this is, kind of a new thing to digest. So we're, definitely going to do our best to reach as many people as possible.
Thanks, John. And I think this is a good question for you because you're definitely active in your neighborhood. This is from an anonymous attendee. They're asking any suggestions on how to get neighbors interested in this. I have really insular neighbors, people reluctant to come together, people reluctant to come together.
Yeah, boy, I am. It's hard to know. I feel like I get along great with some of my neighbors in my neighborhood, and we have like neighborhood potlucks and try to deliberately build community, but it's never everybody. And there's depending where you live, there might be a neighborhood association, and that can be one way. I know that's not always an easy space for everybody, just because people have mixed experiences with that. I live in Colleen neighborhood, and we have a really wonderful neighborhood association here. I haven't been to any other neighborhood association, so I can't speak to what that's like in other neighborhoods. There's but it doesn't have to be your neighborhood, your immediate neighbors. It could be a church community that you're a part of. It could be a civic organization that you're a part of. It could be a sports team that you're a part of. really any kind of network that exists in your life, I think is a great way to um, ask folks to engage. And if you want some help, you can just send us an email. And if we have the capacity, then we'll certainly be happy to engage. Just as a quick example, we were invited to participate today in a meeting in the Centennial neighborhood, and I rode my bike out there and brought my laptop so we could do a PowerPoint presentation that you guys saw, that everyone saw today. And so just let us know. We'll get there. And of course we now are all very familiar with meeting online, so people don't even have to leave their house to engage with us necessarily. So another great way. We're happy to. I'm sure we'll given the fact that we're likely to extend the deadline for comment, we'll probably schedule some more of these online webinars and more in-person events.
Thank you, John. And this guest, Johannes, they just mentioned they just said you started answering their question, which is great. I will just go back to the original question: is how does the plan intend to identify where vulnerabilities exist across the county? I really appreciate the collaboration with community organizations in shaping this plan. Community stakeholders are essential in surfacing local challenges. That said, some neighborhoods have fewer or less established CBOs. I'm curious how the plan accounts for those areas and ensures disparities in community representation do not go unrecognized.
Yeah, thanks, Johannes. It's such a really deep insight there. Yeah, I think one just this is there's so many pockets out there of communities that we might just not know about because we only kind of know what we know, and that's why being able to have these types of meetings where people can kind of point us like, hey, have you talked to this organization? Have you talked to these folks? And one of the things that Jayraj and Monique have done really incredibly over the past year and a half, 2 years, is really try to like understand like, hey, is there this immigrant and refugee community that we can meet with? Is there this youth organization we can engage with? Is there a group of people that are meeting around some kind of climate topic that we can go find and talk to, and to really try to understand it. But those aren't the only tools. We also have tools like syndromic surveillance. So I mentioned in my timeline earlier that the health department is putting together these reports about how public health reports about how climate change is showing up, and we can look at for example, how many people are showing up in the emergency room after a heat event or during a heat event. And are those folks, demographically overrepresented? Is the burden of disease higher in certain populations, right? We had Jayraj led this incredible regional project of going out and doing heat island surveillance, where they put these special instruments on vehicles, went out, drove around, collected literally millions of points of data, and then that all got analyzed, with some very sophisticated tools. And now we have this really comprehensive understanding of where our urban heat islands are. And then we also overlay that with demographic data about income, age, the types of buildings, like and how old are the buildings, and do the buildings have air conditioning, and are they multi-story buildings, and that where heat might rise in the building, what's the tree canopy cover. So really looking at a variety of factors to understand, like, not just like, okay, well, what's the hottest place, but like, where is the population, who is the population, how vulnerable might they be, based on public, this public health data that we have available to us. So I think it's a lot of relational work, and that relational work can always, as Greg was mentioning, it can always go broader. and always go deeper, right? We're trying to build the root system here that is going to sustain this work going forward. And as we know from a tree, the broader and deeper that root system, the stronger the tree is going to be, and the more resilient that tree is going to be. But we also know that there's this deep need to connect with more people, and we have limitations. A big limitation can be language, for example. Obviously, we're speaking English tonight. A lot of our materials so far, we're working on developing translated materials right now so that we can start getting the word out to different language groups, or people work, or they're parenting, or they're taking care of older parents, or there's so many ways in which people have complex, busy lives, and so reaching people can be difficult. But we're trying a lot of different strategies to do that. And when somebody reaches out to us, we want to jump on that opportunity. A little while ago, the mayor or the city manager of Wood Village reached out and said, "Hey, it's really hot in Wood Village. We saw Jay Rogers' report. It seems like it's really hot here." And we were like, "Yeah, it is." He's like, "Well, what are we going to do about it?" And so we were able to put together some resources. And really, the key ingredient there wasn't so much the money, and the money was vital, right? And the expertise that we were able to bring to it was vital. But was sort of the secret sauce was getting connected with this grassroots network of leaders, who were from that community, who spoke the language, who were trusted, very importantly, and where over a month, 2 months, we're trying to get people to get heat pumps. So they were, we couldn't get anybody to sign up, and then we kind of connect with this network, and then like a day later we have like 60 signups, right? So like that's the type of work we have to do. That relational work is so important.
Thank you, John. We probably have time for about, I want to say, depending on the question, I want to say one or two more questions. And Johannes said, "Thank you, John."
Thanks, Johannes. I'm looking forward to connecting with you more. I think what Monique was trying to say, we have time for one or two more questions, depending how long John talks for.
Depending on how elaborate the questions are. And want to just reiterate that we will have this webinar recording online. And so, please, I hope it's been informational and educational tonight. And, we really, please spread the word to your friends and network.
Well, on behalf of, and feel free to throw in another question in there if you want to, but before too many folks start to log off, I just wanted to say on behalf of Multnomah County, and Chair Vega Peterson, thank you so much for coming tonight, for really being engaged in this issue, and lending us some of these valuable questions and feedback. I just want to, what could be a better way of spending your Earth Day than thinking about what our community looks like in the future, and working together to build a better community for everybody. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the kind words. We can stay on a few more minutes if someone has like a last minute question. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great night.
We have 5 minutes left. See a few. There's 4 folks on, but I think we can end early. And if there's any questions that you have after, please reach out to us. We're always an open book or open door. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a great evening. Appreciate you all.
Thanks so much for your time, everyone.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the last bits of sunshine.